I never should have taken that shortcut. It was supposed to save me time, get me home faster after a long day at the conference. Instead, it led me into a nightmare I'm still not sure I've escaped. It was just past midnight when I turned off the main highway onto Route 23, a narrow 2-lane road that cut through miles of dense forest. My GPS promised it would shave an hour off my trip, and I was eager to get home to my own bed. The night was moonless, the darkness absolute beyond the reach of my headlights. I cranked up the radio, trying to keep myself alert as the miles rolled by. But as I drove deeper into the forest, the radio signal began to fade, replaced by static that grew louder with each passing minute. I reached to turn it off, and that's when I saw it, a flash of white in my rearview mirror, gone so quickly I thought I must have imagined it. But then I saw it again, closer this time. A pale face, pressed against my back window. My heart leapt into my throat. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching on the asphalt. The car fishtailed, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I would spin off the road. But somehow, I managed to bring it to a stop. Panting, I twisted in my seat, expecting to see, I don't know what. A hitchhiker? A prankster? But there was nothing there. Just the empty road stretching out behind me, swallowed by darkness. Get it together, I muttered to myself, running a shaky hand through my hair. You're tired. Your mind is playing tricks on you. I took a deep breath and put the car back in drive. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The forest seemed to press in on all sides, the trees looming impossibly tall in the glow of my headlights. That's when my phone chimed, a text message. Grateful for the distraction, I glanced down at the screen. My blood ran cold as I read the words, "Turn back now." The number was blocked. With trembling fingers, I tried to call my wife, but there was no signal. I was alone out here, in the middle of nowhere, with no way to call for help. I pressed down on the accelerator, urging my car to go faster. The engine whined in protest as I pushed it to its limits. I just needed to get through this forest, to get back to civilization. But the road seemed to stretch on endlessly, each curve revealing only more darkness ahead. And then I saw it, a figure standing in the middle of the road, directly in my path. I swerved hard, narrowly missing the person. As I flew past, I caught a glimpse of a woman in a white dress, her long dark hair obscuring her face. She didn't move, didn't react at all to the car that had nearly hit her. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep control of the wheel. This couldn't be happening. It had to be some kind of hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But then she was there again, standing on the side of the road. And again, 100 yards further on. The same woman, multiplied, lining the road like some macabre parade. I closed my eyes for a split second, willing the vision to disappear. When I opened them, the women were gone. But something else had taken their place. My headlights illuminated a sign at the side of the road, "Welcome to Shadow Grove, population, U." I had never heard of Shadow Grove. It wasn't on any map, wasn't programmed into my GPS. Yet here I was, passing through its borders. The forest began to thin, giving way to abandoned buildings, old houses with boarded-up windows, a gas station with rusted pumps, a church with a crooked steeple reaching towards the starless sky. I slowed down, looking for any sign of life, any place I could stop and ask for help. But the town was silent, empty. It looked like it had been deserted for years. As I approached what seemed to be the town center, my headlights fell upon a figure standing in the road. My heart leapt. Finally, another person. But as I drew closer, I realized something was terribly wrong. The figure was unnaturally tall and thin, its limbs too long for its body. It stood perfectly still, facing away from me. Slowly, impossibly, its head began to turn. Further and further it rotated, well past the point where a human neck would have snapped. I slammed on the brakes, throwing the car into reverse. But the engine sputtered and died. In the sudden silence, I heard a sound that made my skin crawl, a low, rhythmic clicking, like bones knocking together. The creature in the road began to move towards me, its gait jerky and unnatural. I fumbled with the keys, trying desperately to restart the engine. It roared to life just as the thing reached my door. I caught a glimpse of its face, if you could call it that. Where features should have been, there was only smooth, pale skin. But somehow, impossibly, it spoke. "Welcome home," it said, its voice a rasping whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We've been waiting for you." I floored the accelerator, tires squealing as I tore away from the creature. In my rearview mirror, I saw more of them emerging from the shadows, their elongated limbs carrying them with terrifying speed. I drove blindly, taking turns at random, desperate to find my way out of this nightmare town. But every road seemed to lead back to the center, to that thing standing in the street. As I made another frantic turn, my headlights illuminated a massive shape looming in the road ahead. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. My car plowed into the object with a sickening crunch. Dazed, I looked up through my cracked windshield. What I had hit wasn't a tree or a building. It was a wall, a massive, black wall that stretched as far as I could see in either direction, its surface seeming to absorb all light. I stumbled out of the car, my legs shaky beneath me. The wall towered above me, so tall I couldn't see its top. And there, carved into its surface in letters taller than I was, a message: "The way is shut." A cold dread settled over me as I realized the truth. There was no escape from Shadow Grove. I was trapped here, in this town that shouldn't exist, surrounded by creatures that defied explanation. In the distance, I could hear them coming, that awful clicking sound growing louder. I turned to run, but where could I go? Every direction led to more darkness, more horror. As the creatures closed in, their blank faces somehow radiating hunger and malice, I felt a shift in the air. The world seemed to ripple, like heat waves on hot asphalt. And suddenly, I was back in my car, on Route 23, the forest pressing in on all sides. I blinked, disoriented. Had it all been a dream? Some kind of waking nightmare brought on by exhaustion? But then I saw it, a sign on the side of the road, illuminated for a split second by my headlights: Shadow Grove, 5 miles. Then, just as I was starting to think I might have imagined it all, I saw a flicker of movement at the edge of my headlights. A figure, darting between the trees. I caught a glimpse of pale skin, of limbs too long to be human. My foot pressed harder on the accelerator, but the speedometer was already maxed out. The engine whined in protest as I pushed it beyond its limits. That's when I noticed the odometer. The numbers were spinning wildly, far faster than they should have been. Miles flew by in seconds, the counter quickly reaching impossible numbers. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, tinged with hysteria. None of this made sense. I had to be dreaming. Had to be. But if this was a dream, why couldn't I wake up? Suddenly, The trees on either side of the road burst into flame. The heat was intense, immediately fogging up my windows. Through the smoke and steam, I saw shapes moving in the fire, tall, thin figures dancing in the inferno, their bodies twisting in ways that made my mind recoil. I tried to focus on the road ahead, but it was transforming before my eyes. The asphalt bubbled and shifted, taking on the texture of skin. Veins pulsed beneath the surface, and I realized with horror that the road was alive. My car shuddered and groaned, the metal of its frame beginning to soften and warp. I felt it melting around me, fusing with my skin. I tried to scream, but my mouth was full of liquid metal. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I saw it, the wall. It rose up before me, a barrier of absolute darkness. There was no avoiding it this time, no waking up at the last second. I closed my eyes, bracing for impact. The crash never came. Instead, I felt a sensation of falling, of being pulled down into infinite darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was somewhere else entirely. I stood on a vast plain under a sky filled with impossible stars. The ground beneath my feet was black glass, reflecting the cosmos above. And stretching out to the horizon in every direction were doors, millions upon millions of doors of every shape and size. A voice spoke, not in my ears but directly in my mind, "Choose." I turned in a slow circle, overwhelmed by the endless options before me. Each door, I somehow knew, led to a different reality. Some might lead to safety, to a world where none of this had happened. Others. I shuddered, not wanting to think about what horrors might lurk behind some of these doors. "Choose," the voice repeated, more insistent this time. I took a hesitant step towards the nearest door, a simple wooden one that looked like it might lead to a cozy cabin. But as my hand touched the knob, I heard that awful clicking sound again. I spun around. The creatures from Shadow Grove were here, gliding across the glass plane, their blank faces fixed on me. "Choose," the voice thundered. In a panic, I yanked open the wooden door and threw myself through it. I felt a moment of weightlessness, of being stretched and compressed simultaneously. And then, I was back in my car. On Route 23. The forest pressed in on all sides, my headlights illuminating only a small stretch of road ahead. For a long moment, I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. Was it over? Had I escaped? Slowly, I became aware of something in my peripheral vision. I turned my head, dreading what I might see. There, carved into the passenger side door, were 5 words: "The game is just beginning." I don't know how long I've been driving now. Hours? Days? The forest seems endless, the night eternal. My phone is dead, the GPS offline. I've passed the sign for Shadow Grove countless times, but the town itself remains elusive. Sometimes I see things in the rearview mirror, pale faces, elongated limbs, eyes that glow with an inner fire. But when I turn to look, there's nothing there. Just the empty road stretching out behind me. I don't know if I'm still in the real world, or if I'm trapped in some kind of purgatory. All I know is that I can't stop driving. Because every time I slow down, I hear that clicking sound again, growing closer. So I drive on through the endless night, searching for a way out, a way home. And I pray that someday, somehow, this road will lead me back to the world I knew. But deep down, I fear that world is gone forever. That I'm trapped in this loop, this game, for eternity. If you're reading this, if you've somehow received this message, Please stay off the back roads. Stick to the highways, the well-lit paths. Don't take shortcuts, no matter how much time they promise to save you. Because out there in the darkness, in the spaces between places, something is waiting. And once it notices you, the game never really ends. I see another sign up ahead. Maybe this time it will be different. Maybe this time I'll find my way home. Or maybe I'll just keep driving, forever and ever, through this terrifying night ride that never seems to end. He lunges at me, tentacles lashing out. I dive to the side, rolling across the ground that pulses beneath me like a living thing. As I scramble to my feet, I realize the entire town is coming alive around me. Buildings stretch and groan, the road bubbles and splits, and from every shadow, the twisted residents of Shadow Grove emerge. I run, my feet pounding against the ever-shifting ground. I have no destination in mind, no plan. I just know I need to keep moving, to find something, anything, that might help me undo what I've done. As I round a corner, I find myself face to face with the church where it all began. The place where I first performed the ritual that doomed us all. Its steeple reaches impossibly high into the sky, piercing clouds that writhe and churn with unnatural colors. The doors stand open, a rectangle of pure darkness that seems to pull at me. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to my core, that this is where I need to go. Whatever answers I seek, whatever chance I have at redemption, it lies within. I take a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever horrors await inside. Behind me, I can hear the townsfolk approaching, their misshapen bodies dragging across the ground, their voices rising in a terrible chorus. This is it. The moment of truth. I've run for so long, trying to escape the consequences of my actions. But now it's time to face them head-on. To step into the darkness I created and find a way to banish it once and for all. As I cross the threshold into the church, the darkness envelopes me. For a moment, I'm blind, deaf, cut off from everything. Then, slowly, my senses return, and I find myself in a place that both is and isn't the church I remember. The interior stretches out impossibly, the walls lined with writhing symbols that hurt to look at directly. The pews are gone, replaced by strange, organic growths that pulse with an inner light. And at the far end, where the altar should be, stands a swirling portal of darkness. I know without being told that this is the door I opened all those years ago. The gateway that allowed the entities from beyond to enter our world and corrupt Shadow Grove. And somehow, I have to find a way to close it. As I approach the portal, I feel its pull. It wants to draw me in, to consume me like it did the town. But I resist, planting my feet firmly on the ground. That's when I notice the book. It sits on a pedestal before the portal, its cover made of some material I can't identify. As I draw closer, I see the title etched in letters of fire, The Price of Knowledge. With trembling hands, I open the book. Its pages are filled with the same writings I studied so long ago, the forbidden knowledge that led me down this dark path. But now, with the wisdom born of suffering, I begin to see the text in a new light. Hidden within the eldritch script are instructions, not for opening doors to other realms, but for closing them. The ritual is complex, requiring sacrifice and suffering. But as I read, I realized with growing horror what it truly demands. To close the portal and save what's left of Shadow Grove, someone must take the place of the entities on the other side. A voluntary exile into realms beyond human comprehension. And it can't be just anyone. It has to be the one who opened the door in the first place. It has to be me. As the realization sinks in, I hear movement behind me. The townsfolk have entered the church, their twisted forms filling the cavernous space. But they're not attacking. They're watching, waiting. The mayor, still a mass of tentacles and teeth, speaks. You understand now, don't you? What must be done? What you must become. I nod slowly, a calm settling over me despite the terror clawing at my insides. I do. And I'm ready. With those words, something shifts in the air. The hostility emanating from the townsfolk fades, replaced by a solemn anticipation. They form a circle around me and the portal, their bodies swaying in time to some unheard rhythm. I turn to face the swirling darkness, the book clutched to my chest. As I begin to recite the words of the ritual, the air grows thick with power. The symbols on the walls glow brighter, and I feel something fundamental shifting in the fabric of reality. With each word, I feel pieces of myself being stripped away. My memories, my identity, my very humanity, all of it falling away like leaves in an autumn wind. Pain lances through me, more intense than anything I've ever experienced. But I don't stop. I can't stop. As I speak the final word, the portal flares with blinding light. I feel myself being pulled forward, drawn inexorably towards the gateway between worlds. With my last moment of human consciousness, I look back at the gathered townsfolk. I see the changes already beginning. The corruption receding, their bodies slowly returning to human form. In their eyes, I see a mixture of gratitude, pity, and something else, a recognition of the sacrifice being made. Then I'm through the portal, and everything I ever was ceases to be. Consciousness stretched across realities I can't begin to comprehend. I am everywhere and nowhere, every when and never when. I am the gatekeeper, the barrier, the living seal between worlds. Time has no meaning here, in this place beyond places. I could have been here for seconds or centuries. But slowly, gradually, I become aware of a tug. A pull back towards the reality I left behind. I resist at first, fearing that my return might undo everything I sacrificed myself to achieve. But the pull is insistent, and eventually, I allow myself to be drawn back. I find myself standing once again in the Church of Shadow Grove. But it's changed. The writhing symbols are gone, the walls now plain and weathered. Sunlight streams through windows that were boarded up for decades. And there are people here. Normal, human people, kneeling in pews, their heads bowed in prayer. At the altar stands a priest, his voice rising and falling in familiar cadences. For a moment, I think I've somehow traveled back in time, to before I doomed the town. But then I notice the differences. The hairstyles and clothes are modern. And there's a plaque on the wall that catches my eye. In memory of those lost in the Shadow Grove incident, it reads, "May we never forget the price of forbidden knowledge." I try to speak, to ask what's happening, but I have no voice. I have no body. I realize with a start that I'm not really here, not physically, at least. I'm a ghost, a spectral observer in a world that has moved on without me. As I drift through the town, I see more changes. The twisted architecture is gone, replaced by normal buildings. People go about their daily lives, laughing and talking. There's no sign of the horrors that once plagued this place. I find myself drawn to the town square. The statue of me is gone. In its place stands a memorial fountain. The plaque at its base tells a story, a heavily redacted version of what really happened, but close enough. It speaks of a dimensional incident that nearly destroyed the town, of brave souls who sacrificed themselves to save others, and of the lessons learned about the dangers of pushing beyond the boundaries of known science. As I read, I feel a mix of emotions I can't quite name. Relief that the town is safe, sadness for all that was lost, and a strange, bittersweet pride that my final act helped to set things right. But my observations are cut short by a familiar voice, one I haven't heard in what feels like eons. "I thought I might find you here." I turn, or whatever the equivalent is for a non-corporeal being, and find myself face to face with the woman in the white dress. But she's different now. The vortex that was her face is gone, replaced by features that are at once familiar and strange. "You," I say, surprised to find I can communicate. "What are you? What am I? What's happening?" She smiles, a sad and knowing expression. "I am what you might become, given time. A watcher. A guardian. Someone who has paid the price of knowledge and come out the other side." "And me?" I ask. "You are in between," she says. "No longer fully human, not yet fully other. You've done what was needed to save Shadow Grove. But your journey isn't over." I look around at the town, at the people going about their lives, blissfully unaware of the cosmic horror they narrowly escaped. What more is there to do? Haven't I set things right? The woman shakes her head. Shadow Grove is safe, yes. But it's not the only place where the veil between worlds is thin. Not the only town where someone might be tempted to meddle with forces beyond their understanding. I begin to understand. You want me to, what? Protect other places? Prevent what happened here from happening again? She nods. If you choose to, yes. It's a lonely existence, straddling the line between worlds. Never fully part of either. But it's a necessary one. I consider her words, weighing them against the enormity of what I've already experienced. Part of me longs for rest, for an end to this cosmic odyssey. But another part, the part that drove me to seek out forbidden knowledge in the first place, is intrigued by the possibilities. What if I refuse? I ask, already suspecting the answer. Then you remain as you are, she says. A ghost, a memory, gradually fading as the years pass. It's not a punishment. Simply a consequence of the choice you've already made. I look out over Shadow Grove one last time. The sun is setting, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple. It's beautiful in a way I'd forgotten things could be. I'll do it, I say, the words feeling right as soon as they leave me. I made this mess. The least I can do is try to prevent it from happening again. The woman smiles, and for a moment, I see flashes of other realities behind her eyes. Then let your new journey begin, she says, extending her hand. As I take it, I feel a surge of power and knowledge. The barriers between worlds become transparent to me, and I can see the web of reality spread out in all directions. I am no longer bound by physical form or linear time. I am a guardian, a watcher, a protector against the horrors that lurk beyond the veil of our reality. My name, my old identity, falls away. I am simply the gatekeeper now. And my vigil is eternal. As Shadow Grove fades from view, I catch glimpses of other places, other times. A small town in the desert where a strange radio signal is captivating the residents. A research station in Antarctica where scientists are on the verge of drilling into something they don't understand. A bustling city where an ancient artifact is about to be unearthed. Countless potential disasters, countless opportunities to prevent the horrors I once unleashed. My journey as a human ended on that terrifying night ride. But this new journey, this eternal vigil, is just beginning. And somewhere out there, in the spaces between worlds, the entities I once contacted are waiting, watching, hungry for any opportunity to break through. But I'll be there, watching, waiting, ready to close the doors they seek to open. The night may be dark and full of terrors, but I am the light in that darkness. The thin line between reality and cosmic horror. And my watch begins now. I am unmade and remade, The sign flashes by, but it's not the one I've been hoping for. Instead of an exit or a town name, it simply reads, "No escape." My heart sinks, but I press on. What choice do I have? As I drive, I notice something strange happening to my car. The interior seems to be expanding. The passenger seat slowly inches away from me, the back seat receding into shadows. I blink hard, trying to clear my vision, but when I open my eyes, I'm no longer driving a car. I'm at the helm of a massive ship, sailing through an ocean of darkness. The wheel beneath my hands is made of bone, and the sails above billow with what looks unsettlingly like human skin. The horizon is an unbroken line of absolute black, no stars, no moon, nothing to guide me. What the hell is happening? I mutter, my voice sounding small and lost in the vastness around me. As if in answer, a low moan rises from the depths below. The ship shatters, and I feel something massive brush against the hull. I lean over the side, peering into the inky waters, and immediately wish I hadn't. Huge, luminescent eyes stare back at me, each one larger than my entire body. They blink slowly, and I catch glimpses of tentacles large enough to crush cities writhing in the depths. I stumble back from the railing, my mind reeling. This can't be real. None of this can be real. But the wood beneath my feet, the salt spray on my face, the bone-deep cold, it all feels too vivid to be a dream. Suddenly, a figure appears at the bow of the ship. It's the woman in the white dress I saw on the road, her long dark hair whipping in a wind I can't feel. She turns to face me, and I have to stifle a scream. Where her face should be, there's only a swirling vortex of darkness. When she speaks, her voice echoes from that void, each word sending shivers down my spine. "You're getting closer," she says. But the journey is far from over. Closer to what? I demand, trying to keep the fear from my voice. "What do you want from me?" She glides towards me, her feet hovering inches above the deck. "It's not about what we want," she says. "It's about what you need to understand." Before I can ask what she means, she reaches out and touches my forehead. The world explodes into a kaleidoscope of images and sensations. I see Shadow Grove as it once was, a thriving town full of life and laughter. But beneath the surface, there's something rotten. I see dark rituals performed in secret, sacrifices made to entities beyond human comprehension. I see the town slowly being consumed by the darkness it invited in, its residents transforming into the creatures that now haunt my journey. And I see myself, or someone who looks like me, standing at the center of it all. Orchestrating the rituals, opening doors that should have remained closed. The vision ends as abruptly as it began. I find myself back on the ship, gasping for air, my mind struggling to process what I've seen. That wasn't me, I say, my voice shaking. I've never been to Shadow Grove before. I'm not that person. The woman tilts her head, the vortex of her face swirling faster. Are you sure? Time is a circle here, and identity is fluid. You've been making this journey for longer than you know. Before I can respond, the ship gives a violent lurch. The massive creature beneath us is surfacing, its tentacles wrapping around the hull. As the ship begins to splinter, the woman in white reaches for me once more. Remember, she says. The only way out is through. Her hand closes around my wrist, and we fall together into the churning black waters. I'm drowning, choking on liquid darkness. Just as my lungs are about to burst, I break the surface, but I'm no longer in an ocean. I'm in a bathtub, in a bathroom I don't recognize. The walls are covered in mirrors, each one reflecting a slightly different version of me. In one, I'm younger. In another, older. In some, I'm not quite human. I climb out of the tub on shaky legs, water dripping from my clothes. The door creaks open on its own, revealing a long hallway lined with more mirrors. At the far end, I see a figure that looks like the man from my vision, the one who brought darkness to Shadow Grove. He beckons to me, then turns and walks away. Against my better judgment, I follow. The hallway seems to stretch on forever, the reflections in the mirrors becoming more distorted and nightmarish with each step. I see versions of myself twisted into impossible shapes, merged with shadows, consumed by cosmic horrors. Finally, I reach the end of the hall. There's a door there, ordinary looking amidst all the strangeness. The man who looks like me stands beside it, his hand on the knob. Are you ready to remember? He asks, his voice an echo of my own. Remember what? I ask, though part of me already knows the answer. Who you really are, he says. What you've done. What you're running from. He opens the door, revealing a swirling vortex of memories. I try to step back, to run, but my body moves forward of its own accord. As I cross the threshold, knowledge floods my mind. I remember everything. I am the founder of Shadow Grove. The one who discovered ancient, forbidden texts and used them to contact entities from beyond our reality. I promised the townspeople power and enlightenment. Instead, I brought doom upon us all. When I realized what I had done, the horrors I had unleashed, I tried to run. But Shadow Grove wouldn't let me go so easily. It pulled me into this nightmare realm, forcing me to confront my sins over and over again. Each loop of the highway, each transformation of my surroundings, each encounter with the twisted residents of Shadow Grove, all of it designed to make me remember, to force me to face the consequences of my actions. As the memories settle into place, I find myself back on Route 23. But this time, it's different. The oppressive darkness is gone, replaced by the soft light of dawn. The forest looks normal, peaceful even. I bring the car to a stop and step out. The air is crisp and clean, filled with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, I feel at peace. But I know it can't last. This moment of tranquility is just that, a moment. A brief respite before the next phase of my journey. Because now I understand. This isn't just about punishment or penance. It's about fixing what I broke. Somehow, I have to find a way to undo the damage I've done, to free Shadow Grove and its people from the darkness I brought upon them. As if summoned by my thoughts, the woman in the white dress appears at the edge of the forest. This time, I can see her face, and it's my own, twisted by grief and determination. "You remember now," she says. It's not a question. I nod. What do I do? How do I make this right? She smiles, but it's a sad expression. That's for you to figure out. The journey isn't over. It's only just beginning. With that, she fades away, leaving me alone on the sunlit road. But I know the peace won't last. Soon, night will fall again. The horrors will return. And I'll have to face them, armed with the knowledge of who I am and what I've done. I get back in the car and start the engine. The road ahead shimmers, already beginning to transform into something new and terrifying. But this time, I'm ready for it. Or as ready as I'll ever be. As I drive forward into whatever nightmares await, I make a vow. I will find a way to break this cycle. I will free Shadow Grove from the darkness I brought upon it. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find redemption for myself in the process. The sun sets, plunging the world into darkness once more. The road beneath my wheels begins to writhe and pulse. In the distance, I hear that familiar clicking sound, growing louder. Here we go again. But this time, it's different. This time, I'm not just running. I'm searching for answers, for a way to set things right. The night may be long, the horrors unimaginable, but I drive on. Because somewhere out there, in the twisted landscape of my own making, lies the key to undoing all of this. And I will find it, no matter how many times I have to relive this terrifying night ride. As the world around me shifts and transforms, I grip the steering wheel tighter. Whatever comes next, I'm ready to face it. Because now I know the truth, I'm not just a victim of this nightmare. I'm its creator. And only I can bring it to an end. The road ahead splits into multiple paths, each one promising new horrors and revelations. I take a deep breath and choose one, plunging into the unknown. This is where my true journey begins. The journey to save Shadow Grove, to face the consequences of my actions, and perhaps to save my own soul in the process. As I drive deeper into the heart of the nightmare I created, I can't help but wonder, will I ever truly find my way out? Or am I doomed to repeat this cycle for eternity, always searching for a redemption that may never come? Only time will tell. And in this place, where reality bends and breaks, time is the one thing I have in abundance. So I drive on, into the endless night, hoping that someday, somehow, I'll find the answers I seek. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find my way back to the light. But for now, the darkness calls. And I must answer. The road stretches out before me, a ribbon of black cutting through the twisted landscape. In the distance, I see the silhouette of Shadow Grove, its impossible architecture a stark reminder of the horrors I unleashed. This time, instead of trying to escape, I steer directly towards it. As I approach the town limits, the air around me thickens, becoming almost syrupy. Colors bleed and swirl, and I feel a pressure building in my skull, as if my very thoughts are trying to escape. But I press on, gritting my teeth against the pain. The Welcome to Shadow Grove sign looms ahead, but now I can see what's written in smaller letters beneath: population infinite. I suppress a shudder and drive past it. The streets of Shadow Grove are a nightmare made manifest. Buildings twist and contort, their architecture defying all laws of physics. Shadows move of their own accord, reaching out with grasping tendrils. And everywhere I look, I see the town's residents, the people I doomed with my arrogance and hunger for forbidden knowledge. They line the streets, their bodies warped and transformed. Some have too many limbs, others not enough. Faces blur and shift, never settling on a single form. And their eyes. God, their eyes are the worst. Filled with a mixture of pain, anger, and something else, a horrible, insatiable hunger. I park the car in what used to be the town square. At its center stands a statue that wasn't here before, a perfect replica of me, carved from some black stone that seems to absorb all light. At its base, words are etched in glowing script, the opener of ways. As I step out of the car, the air fills with whispers. The townsfolk are speaking, their voices a cacophony of agony and accusation. You did this to us, they say. You opened the door. You let them in. I know, I reply, my voice barely a whisper. I'm here to make it right. To close what I opened. To send them back. A laugh rings out, cold and cruel. From the shadows steps a figure I recognize, the mayor of Shadow Grove. Or what's left of him. His body is a mass of writhing tentacles, his face split by a moth filled with needle-like teeth. Make it right, he says, his voice a wet gurgle. Oh, it's far too late for that. We're beyond saving. Beyond humanity. And soon, you will be too.